Imagine for a second that you are standing at a literal crossroads in the dead of night. Looking down the left road, you've got this incredibly powerful, brilliantly bright flashlight in your hand.
Right, and you're the one in control of it.
Exactly. You control it. You point it, you illuminate the path, and you can see every rock, every root, every hazard in front of you. And this is basically the road of human intellect. It's reason.
It's that process of asking questions, isolating variables, and, following logic step by step to arrive at a verifiable conclusion.
Yeah, and it's a very empowering feeling, holding that light. You are the investigator. You are mastering your environment by dissecting it. And the more you sweep that beam back and forth, the more secure you feel.
But then there's the other road.
Right. You look down the right road, and that path is illuminated too. But the difference is the light isn't coming from your flashlight.
Yeah.
It's coming from above, from a source you don't control, and, well, you can't manipulate it.
It's a light that reveals the entire landscape all at once.
Exactly. And that road calls you to just, listen, to receive truths that you couldn't possibly uncover just by walking with your head down, sweeping a beam back and forth. This is the path of revelation.
And the imagery right there, it captures one of the oldest, most consequential tensions in human history. We are looking at a stack of sources today that trace how this specific tension between what we can discover and what is disclosed to us has shaped entire civilizations.
Which is a massive topic.
Oh, for sure. It has steered massive philosophical movements, and it fundamentally alters how you and I define what is actually true.
And look, if you are feeling exhausted by the modern culture wars, that constant grinding battle where you are repeatedly forced to choose between the team of science and evidence or the team of faith and belief, we want to cure some of that information overload today.
Because we live in an era where we are drowning in data but absolutely starving for meaning.
Yes, beautifully put. Today's Heap Dive is about unpacking how this supposed war between thinking and believing might be rooted in a massive structural misunderstanding of what reason and revelation are actually meant to do.
So let's start with that flashlight in your hand. The sheer, unadulterated power of human investigation.
Let's do it.
The sources we're analyzing today emphasize something that, well, it often gets lost in the noise of modern debates. Reason is not portrayed as the enemy of faith in historical theology.
Well, really? Because you'd think, given today's rhetoric, that they're total opposites.
Right, but it's actually framed as one of the most profound, divinely bestowed tools humanity possesses. When we talk about human reason, we are talking about the engine that mapped the constellations.
It is the cognitive machinery that discovered the fundamental laws of thermodynamics.
Exactly. It built towering, complex civilizations out of mud and stone and developed, mRNA vaccines.
It is the ultimate, hyper-sophisticated search engine for the physical universe. I mean, reason is the mechanism that looks at the world and asks the necessary, relentless questions.
Like, why does this cellular mutation happen?
Yeah, or what is the empirical evidence supporting this historical claim? Does this mathematical conclusion logically follow from the data set? It refuses to settle for blind acceptance, and honestly, it shouldn't.
It definitely shouldn't. And if we look closely at the foundational theological texts in our sources, there is a surprising twist for anyone who assumes religion inherently demands blind faith.
Oh, the Isaiah quote, right?
Yeah, Scripture itself actively champions logic. The text highlights a fascinating quote from the ancient prophet Isaiah, where God essentially issues a summons. He says, "Come now, let us reason together."
Let us reason together. That implies an active intellectual exchange. It's an invitation to a courtroom, not a demand for silent submission.
It fundamentally changes the dynamic. That the Hebrew word used there carries the connotation of proving, deciding, or arguing a case.
Wow, so God is not depicted as calling people into a state of mindless intellectual coma.
No, not at all. He invites thoughtful engagement. Historically, if we look at the scientific revolution, some of the greatest minds, think of Johannes Kepler or Isaac Newton, saw absolutely no contradiction between their rigorous intellect and their profound beliefs.
Because for them, mapping the laws of physics was a religious exercise.
Precisely. They believed that studying the intricacies of creation was just another way of studying the mind of the creator. They were using reason exactly as they believed it was intended.
But, okay, I've got a major sticking point here, and I'm sure anyone listening who leans toward the empirical side is thinking the exact same thing.
Let's hear it.
If reason is this powerful, if it is this ultimate investigative tool that even ancient texts endorse, why do we need anything else?
Ah, the ultimate question.
Right. Like if our universal search engine can map the human genome and land a rover on Mars, shouldn't a powerful enough microscope, given enough time, eventually show us absolutely everything there is to know about reality?
Well, that assumes reality is entirely confined to the physical, measurable domain. And that brings us right to the edge of the map.
The edge of the map.
Yeah. Reason is undeniably powerful, but it has a horizon. It has inherent structural boundaries built into its very nature.
The horizon of human intellect. The point where the flashlight simply can't reach any further into the dark.
Exactly. Let's examine the epistemological limits, the boundaries of how we know what we know. The scientific method, which is the peak of human reasoning, requires variables to be isolated, measured, and falsified.
Right. It's all about observable data.
Right. Human logic can calculate the exact speed of light in a vacuum because light behaves predictably in a material universe. But it utterly fails to calculate the meaning of love.
Oh, that's a great distinction.
We can map out incredibly complex neurological processes in the prefrontal cortex. We can watch the brain light up on an fMRI when someone experiences joy, but reason alone cannot explain why beauty exists.
Or why we are moved to tears by a symphony. It cannot explain inherent purpose.
Yes. I mean, it just doesn't have the tools for that.
You know, I was looking at my wrist earlier today and thinking about our notes for this deep dive.
Yeah.
I have this top-of-the-line, ultra-expensive smartwatch.
Oh, yeah, those track everything now.
Exactly. It tracks my exact heart rate, my blood oxygen levels, my REM sleep cycles. It can tell me with perfect, measurable clinical precision exactly how my heart is beating.
Good.
But that piece of miraculous technology cannot tell me who I should give my heart to. It has absolutely no mechanism for answering that question.
That captures the synthesis our sources are making perfectly. Reason is a master at answering how questions.
How does a cell divide? How does gravity warp spacetime?
Exactly. But it hits an absolute brick wall when it confronts the deepest why questions. And this isn't just a minor gap in our knowledge that science will eventually fill. It is a categorical limit.
It's the existential territory.
Precisely. Why is there a universal cross-cultural sense of moral obligation? Why do humans instinctively hunger for eternity and meaning beyond their own biological survival?
Why does anything exist at all, rather than just empty, silent nothingness?
Right. And the text argues that recognizing these limits isn't an insult to human reason. It's simply a realization that finite material tools cannot measure infinite immaterial realities.
It's the wrong tool for the job.
Exactly. You wouldn't use a thermometer to measure the distance from New York to London. When the thermometer fails to give you the miles, you don't throw it away and call it a broken tool. You just recognize it wasn't built for that job.
Okay, so if reason takes us all the way to the edge of the cliff, but lacks the structural capacity to build a bridge across the chasm of those massive why questions, that's where the light from above enters the picture.
The entrance of revelation.
Right. But we need to carefully define what revelation actually means in this philosophical framework, don't we?
We do. Revelation is not human discovery. It is not humanity finally building a tall enough ladder of intellect to peek over the clouds.
So it's not just a really advanced form of reason.
No, the sources define it as divine disclosure. It is an external truth stepping into our reality to fill the massive existential gaps that reason leaves behind.
Our source material has a sequence of statements that really drives this home. It points out that no telescope can discover forgiveness.
No microscope can reveal grace.
Right. No laboratory experiment, no matter how well-funded or carefully controlled, can uncover a cosmic redemptive plan. You cannot synthesize grace in a petri dish.
Because those realities do not exist on the material plane that reason investigates.
They're in a totally different category.
Exactly. According to the theological framework we are analyzing, this knowledge is available only because the ultimate source of reality chose to reveal it.
Through things like the order of creation or the human conscience.
Yes, through the nagging persistence of the human conscience, through historical prophets, through scriptures, and ultimately through the historical person of Jesus Christ.
The directional shift here is the major unlock for me.
It changes the entire paradigm. Reason is humanity climbing up, trying desperately to understand the universe through our own cognitive effort and technological leverage.
Whereas revelation is heaven coming down to humanity.
Exactly. It's not about intellectual achievement or passing some kind of cosmic IQ test. It's about being in a posture to receive truths that are physically, mathematically impossible to investigate in a laboratory.
Okay, I'm going to play the skeptic here. on behalf of our listeners who might be sensing a trap.
Bring it on.
Doesn't this sound exactly like the classic God of the Gaps argument? I mean, historically, humans used religion as a crutch for bad science.
We didn't understand how lightning works, so we said Zeus was throwing tantrums.
Right. We didn't understand disease, so we blamed evil spirits. Then reason came along, discovered meteorology and germ theory, and basically evicted those gods from the premises.
It's a very common narrative.
So isn't appealing to revelation today just a sophisticated way of giving up when the math gets too hard? Won't reason just eventually conquer this territory too?
That is the most persistent and honestly understandable critique of religion in the modern era. But the sources argue that genuine revelation doesn't replace the math, and it doesn't even try to.
It's doing something else entirely.
Right. It operates in a totally different dimension of truth. To really grasp this, we have to look at the historical debate, this centuries-long tug-of-war between these two concepts, and why the God of the Gaps is actually a misunderstanding of what classical theology claimed.
So how have philosophers and theologians historically wrestled with this without just surrendering to one side or the other?
Well, historically, thinkers tended to retreat into two extreme camps when the tension got too high. The first camp, particularly during and after the Enlightenment, elevated reason above absolutely everything else.
They were exhausted by centuries of religious wars in Europe.
Exactly, and they wanted an objective mathematical reality. They declared that every single belief must pass through the strict courtroom of human intellect. If empirical reason couldn't prove it, it was discarded as superstition.
Which, bringing it back to the smartwatch, means you logically have to stop believing in the concept of love or human rights or objective morality, because the watch can't measure any of those things. You flatten human experience into pure biology.
And that's exactly what the second extreme camp reacted to. They did the exact opposite. We call this fideism.
Fideism, okay.
Yeah. They elevated revelation and developed a deep, fundamental distrust of reason. They argued, leaning heavily on the theological concept of human fallibility, the idea that our cognitive faculties are deeply compromised by sin and self-interest, that human reasoning is far too flawed to be a reliable judge of ultimate truth.
So they wanted to just throw out the science.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Ignore the physical evidence and only rely on what they deem to be divine decree.
Both of those extremes feel incredibly claustrophobic to me. One gives you a meaningless mechanical universe, and the other demands you turn off your brain to survive in it.
It's a lose-lose situation.
But the historical texts we are looking at point to a synthesis, right?
They do. The harmony approach. Thinkers like Thomas Aquinas famously sought to harmonize the two. The underlying logic he and others used is actually very elegant in its simplicity.
Let's hear it.
They argued that God authored two books, the Book of Nature and the Book of Scripture. If the ultimate creator is the author of both the physical, material creation and the spiritual revealed scripture, then the truth discovered by human reason and the truth received by divine revelation must eventually align.
Because they originate from the exact same source of truth.
Exactly. They cannot be in ultimate conflict.
So if the math you're doing and the meaning you're receiving are contradicting each other, you haven't found a flaw in reality. You've just misunderstood one of the books. You either have a bad science or bad theology.
That is the exact conclusion. Apparent contradictions are invitations to look closer, to refine our science or reform our interpretation of the text.
That makes so much sense.
But this brings us to the modern cultural trap we find ourselves in today. We are constantly being sold a false dichotomy.
By who?
The media, the culture wars, even educational systems often tell us explicitly and implicitly that you have to choose a side. Science or faith. Evidence or belief. The laboratory or the sanctuary.
And the sources make a remarkably sharp distinction here that cures this false dichotomy. They argue that reason describes the chemistry of a phenomenon, but revelation speaks to the purpose of that phenomenon.
Yes. Science excels at explaining mechanisms. Faith addresses meaning. Reason can beautifully, intricately explain exactly how a human heart functions. The mitral valves, the electrical impulses from the sinus node, the oxygenation of the blood.
It is a masterpiece of biology.
It really is. But revelation explains why that specific human life, possessing that heart, actually matters in the grand scheme of an unimaginably vast cosmos.
So the conflict isn't actually between reason and revelation at all. They aren't fighting over the same territory.
Not at all.
The conflict is between competing foundational assumptions about reality. One framework is giving us the mechanism, the intricate physical gears turning inside the clock.
And the other framework is giving us the meaning.
Exactly. Telling us what time it is, whose clock it is, and why we should care about the time in the first place.
When you pit them against each other, you are creating a war that doesn't logically need to exist. You are essentially demanding that the flashlight do the job of the sun.
Or you're demanding that the sun replace the need for your flashlight when you're searching for your car keys in a dark alley.
Perfect analogy. They are designed for entirely different scopes of reality. You need both to navigate the world effectively.
And our sources actually point to a specific historical figure as the ultimate embodiment of this partnership. They look at Jesus not just as a religious icon, but as a perfect living union of this epistemological truth.
The analysis of his life and teachings in these texts is fascinating from a purely intellectual standpoint.
How so?
Well, Jesus didn't walk around demanding blind, unthinking obedience. He constantly challenged the faulty reasoning of the cultural and religious elite. He used a form of Socratic questioning.
He asked incredibly penetrating logical questions that backed his opponents into intellectual corners.
He appealed to evidence, too, pointing to his actions, to historical events, to the natural world.
He basically used reason as a scalpel.
He wielded it masterfully to cut away hypocrisy. Yet, simultaneously, he revealed profound, paradigm-shattering truths about the nature of grace, the radical requirement of forgiveness, and the fundamental character of God.
Truths that no philosopher in Athens or Rome, no matter how brilliant, could ever have arrived at through pure deduction.
Exactly. He perfectly embodied the reality that acknowledging the divine does not require you to abandon your mind.
So, if true spirituality doesn't require us to abandon our minds,
Yeah.
what does actual intellectual maturity look like? We talked earlier about reason reaching the edge of its horizon. The flashlight can't pierce any further into the dark.
Right.
What happens at that exact moment?
When human reason reaches the absolute edge of its horizon, it faces a fundamental choice. It can arrogantly declare that absolutely nothing exists beyond what it can currently see, measure, and quantify.
It can claim the universe is only as big as its current instruments.
Or it can humbly acknowledge that reality might just be infinitely greater than its current capacity to comprehend. It can bow without surrendering.
Bowing without surrendering. That is a brilliant way to frame it.
It really is.
It's the realization that faith isn't the opposite of reason. Faith isn't the rejection of logic or a retreat into fairy tales. The text defines faith as a trust that extends just beyond reason's limits.
It's like a child trusting a loving parent.
Yeah, the child doesn't understand the complex why behind the parent's rules. They don't understand the sociology, the physics, or the neuroscience of why they shouldn't run headfirst into a busy intersection.
But they trust the character of the parent holding her hand.
Exactly. That trust isn't irrational. It is based on years of accumulated evidence of love and provision extending into a complex area they simply don't have the cognitive development to fully grasp yet.
That dynamic requires profound humility. If you look at the history of human thought, the greatest scientific discoveries and the most profound philosophical breakthroughs all start with humility.
They start with the unsettling acknowledgement that there is more to learn.
That our current map of reality is incomplete and maybe even flawed. The arrogance of absolute certainty is the enemy of both true science and true faith.
Have you ever considered that admitting you don't know everything, admitting that your tools have limits, is actually the peak of intellectual maturity?
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It takes so much more psychological strength to stand at the edge of the map and say, my instruments can't measure what lies beyond this point, but I am open to receiving the answer, than it does to comfortably cross your arms and say, if I can't measure it, it doesn't exist.
Pulling all of this historical and philosophical analysis together, the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener, from these sources is that reason and revelation are companions.
They are partners in the pursuit of a fully realized truth.
Reason helps us meticulously examine the world. Revelation helps us receive the profound meaning of it. Reason investigates the incredible mathematical intricacies of the creation.
While revelation introduces us to the character of the creator behind it, you desperately need both.
A faith that refuses to think, that hides from evidence and science, is incredibly fragile and easily manipulated by bad actors.
But a mind that refuses to listen, that locks itself entirely inside a materialistic box, is trapped in a remarkably small, cold universe of its own making.
The goal is to cultivate a faith that thinks rigorously and a mind that listens humbly.
Truth, capital T, truth is never, ever threatened by honest, aggressive inquiry. If a belief is genuinely true, it can withstand the absolute harshest scrutiny of your flashlight.
You don't have to protect truth, it protects itself.
And genuine revelation never fears the bright light of human reason. It actually welcomes it, because reason eventually clears away the superstitions that block the light.
It takes the courage to ask the hard, uncomfortable questions, and it takes the humility to listen for the answers that might come from a source entirely beyond our own intellect.
That is how you get the full picture of reality.
The journey toward that reality requires both tools, the flashlight and the dawn.
We're back at the crossroads. You've got the flashlight of reason in your hand and the light of revelation shining from above. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you walk away from this deep dive.
Something to really think about.
If, as the sources argue, genuine revelation never fears the light of reason, then what specific, unaskable question have you been afraid to investigate in your own life? What is that one intellectual or spiritual thread you've been terrified to pull because you thought it might destroy your worldview? What if pulling on that exact thread doesn't actually unravel your beliefs, but leads you straight down an illuminated path to a truth you couldn't have discovered any other way?